So we look down at Ace, King, Jack 7 double suited. So we have Ace, King of Spades, Jack 7 of Diamonds. This is a premium hand. We have 3 to Broadway, a suited ace, and we're double suited. Hands like these are ones that you generally want to 3-bet. So the initial bet is a raise to 35. It comes back to me, and I like to bet 125. I am 3-betting here. Now, when you are 3-betting somebody, it's important to know your opponent. The person that I am 3-betting is the person directly across the camera from here. So we are at a home game in the state of Wisconsin, and the person directly across from me happens to be a very formidable opponent, a very good opponent. He's comfortable with calling 3-bets. He's even comfortable with 4-betting. If you know your opponents well and you decide to 3-bet them, it's very important that you know what their calling range is when you 3-bet and what their range is when they decide to 4-bet. In this situation, you can see the gentleman across the table reaches for black chip. So he makes it 425 to go. Now, Ace, King, Jack 7 is a premium hand. When he decides to 4-bet my 3-bet, that tells me that he has a premium hand as well. So you could make the argument that we can call and see a flop here. I don't mind that argument. At this point, stack to pot size ratios are important. You can see the gentleman across the table has about 1,600 in front of him. I've got about 1,200 in front of me. So essentially, if I call this, I'm going to have a 1-to-1 stack to pot size ratio, which means there's not too many flops that I can fold unless I completely whiff them. So currently, I'm deciding, do I just rip it all in here? Do I fold or do I call? I think the best play here is either to fold, because when you're looking at your opponent's 4-betting range, I put them on either like aces or kings. I decide his 4-betting range is better than what my 3-betting range is, so I'm going to go ahead and lay it down. I show him. He actually turns over king, king, ace, and he said he had the ace blockers, and that's part of why he decided to do that. But when you're playing poker, it's important to know your opponents like this. All right, moving right along to the next hand. We are looking down at King, King, 3, 9. Now, this is another premium hand here. We are on the button. You can see the buttons in front of the camera. Now, we are playing the mushroom game, or what's called the small blind jackpot. Right now, there's only $20 in there, so that's not going to affect it. But you can see here, individuals open up for $20 on a 2-5 game. I re-raise, make it 60. We're in position. We have pocket kings. One of them is suited, so we do have a premium. And we don't mind going to the flop 4 ways and building a pot a little bit. So when the flop comes 4-6 queen with 2 diamonds and we have a king high diamond draw, we really like this flop. We have an overpair, we have second nut flush draw, and an individual here bets $50. Now, when somebody's betting $50 like this into a $250 board, it tells you that they're probably drawing to something. This is a very wet board. There's diamonds out there. There's all sorts of straights out there. Now, we do have the 3 of diamonds in our hand, so we are blocking some wrap draws or some straight draws. But this is a very, very wet board for $50. So when you see that, you have to assume that people are drawing. And then, of course, we have one person call behind. I decide, especially particularly because I'm on the button, in this situation, I recognize that this is a drawing bet, so I decide I'm going to go ahead and raise it up. I'm going to thin the field a little bit, so I make it 175. Now, there are going to be some people who will say, Professor, why don't you just pot it here? If you are going to thin the field, let's really thin the field. Let's represent, especially since I was a 3-bet pre-flop raiser. I understand that situation, but you also have to understand sometimes in these home games, especially when they're only 6 or 7-handed and everybody's deep stacked, people don't fold. So I don't necessarily want to blow up the pot too much. I do want to apply some pressure, but I would basically want to get people out of the hand who have any type of like weak 2 pair holdings 4-6 or any type of straight draws that don't include diamonds. So anybody who might have like 3-5 or 5-7 or maybe even 5-7-8. I don't know if 5-7-8 can find a fold here, but even if they have 5-7-8 with my diamonds, besides, I like my hand. So we end up getting 2 callers going into the turn. Now, the turn card brings us a 9 of diamonds. Bank, we have second nuts. Now, here's a situation when you know your opponents and you know how splashy they are and what kind of players they can be. And here's where you can take a hand and really just fuck it up. This is when I try getting cute with the hand. If I have the second nuts, there's 3 people in the pot. I'm one of them. It goes check, check. The player to my right could be sitting there with an ace-high flush draw. He could be trapping me. And I'm not really sure where he's at. I'm thinking one person has a straight and the other person probably has a baby flush. Now, the individual that you guys don't see at the table happens to be directly to my left, sitting in the one seat, and he's the type of individual when a flush comes out, if you check to him and nothing changes on the board, or even if something does change on the board, if he has like a 10 high flush here or an 8 high flush, he will actually bet pot on the river, and he picks up a lot of pots doing that. Now, this is something I know from playing him for a really long time. So I decided to get a little cute with this hand, and instead of just betting pot and possibly taking it down now, I go ahead and elect to check. You could say I'm trapping the person to my left. That's exactly who I am targeting, because now I know if he's got a jack high flush or a 10 high flush, he's going to bet it. And what ends up happening, but the board pairs, the 6 of spades comes out on the river. So now what happens is the individual who I was targeting, who would be betting with all smaller flushes, he decides to bet pot. Full pot size bet. Fuck it, let's go, he says. And this is the problem that you run into. It's not a problem that he bets full pot size bet, but my plan was to trap him. So the one card that comes is the 6 of spades. It does pair the board. It's really the only card I did not want to see is the board pairing at all. And considering I had a 9 for a blocker as well, I decided to go into the tank for a while. And I know this is going to be weird, but my initial plan was to call him no matter what came. When the board came and it paired, I'm thinking to myself, ugh, what do I do here? I think I have to call him. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What would you do in this situation? When I really start weighing out all the options, I think to myself, I do have a 9, so it's hard for him to have like 6-9, queen 9, and there was an initial bettor that made it $50 directly across from me, so he could have easily had full house blockers like queen 4 or 4-6, and then the guy behind me called as well, and he could have had either a baby flush or a wrap. So I figured at this point, since I did decide I was going to call him no matter what, I go ahead and put in the call, and he shows us the bad news that he has 4s full of 6s. It takes me another minute to get there, but I'm just going to skip that part. Let me know what you guys think on this hand against somebody you would classify not necessarily as like a maniac or a punter. He's a very good player, but he will make this play, and I've seen him make this play over the last couple of years, where he'll, even when the board pairs, he'll just rip it all in or pot it with like a 10 high flush or an 8 high flush, and he picks up a lot of pots doing that. But let me know what you guys think. Was this the right call or not? Obviously I lose, but would you guys have done that knowing that ahead of time? Now we are onward to double board bomb pots. We look down at ace, queen, jack 4, all diamonds. Now, if you guys play a prop bet game, you'd end up winning $25 on the prop bet game, which is all 4 cards end up being suited. So in any case, we are on a double board bomb pot. There's 5-way action. I like to open it up to $30 with ace, queen, jack 4. This is kind of a feeler bet. I am in late position. I'm in the cutoff. And we get a couple of callers here. So if you look at the board, on the top board, we basically have a gut shot straight draw. On the bottom board, we have a gut shot straight draw with top pair. Now, after I bet $30 and get a few callers, the turns come in, and the top board puts out an 8, and the bottom board puts out a jack. Now, this is actually pretty good news for us, because at this point in time, now we have 3 jacks. We're drawing to a full house on the bottom board, and we are still drawing to a gut shot on the top board. And think about this. If somebody had 4-6 to start with, they still have a straight. So that's not much change there. Now, if they had a hand like 6-9-9, all of a sudden they have a full house and the nut straight. But when it checks around to me, you guys know my principles on double board bomb pots, especially when I am blocking top full house. I like to bet $170. Full pot size bet. Just like, let's let her rip right out there. Now it gets to the person who is in the small blind, and they do something that is very rare in double board bomb pots. They elect to check raise to 370. So not only are they check raising, they are check raising for value. Oh my lord, what does this mean? If you're ever faced in a situation where you're in a double board bomb pot and you have position and somebody ends up check raising you, and they don't check raise for pot, they check raise for value, that either means one of two things. Either one, they are extremely nutted on both boards. That means this guy must have 6-9-9. He's got the nut straight on the top board, and he's got a full house on the bottom board. Or it means that he's super nutted on one board and has absolutely nothing on the other board. So you have to figure out with your opponent what you would do. Now, this is the same gentleman who did a full pot size bet on the worst full house that you could have for his full last hand, which ended up being good. So when he check raises to 370 for value, my mind goes, I could be screwed here. I could be calling off against 699. 699 right now is scooping me, but then again, any ace, any queen, any four, I'm good. If he has Jack 10, that would really suck because then he's free rolling to a 9 on the top board. And so I figure he's either got 699 or 6-9 or Jack 10. Those are the range of hands I put him on a check value raise. So then you got to ask yourself, how many of those hands are going to easily scoop me? Like how many combinations of those hands? In the end, I end up saying to myself, it's $200. There's already $700 in the pot, so I'm calling 200 to win 350. I'm going to go ahead and call and then see what he does on the river since I have position. Again, position in double board bomb pots is so important. And the river comes out 2 deuce. Now, you might say that doesn't change much, but it does give me a baby straight on the top. So if he did have a hand like set of 8s, like 8-8 Jack X, then all of a sudden I am beating the top board. So when he likes to check it to me, I do a full pot size bet. Again, if you haven't watched some of my videos on double board bomb pots, when you're in position and you have pressure, you have to apply the pressure. There's a chance that your opponent is not going to call. I understand. I don't have a full house on the second board, but you also have to factor in, I now have a straight on the top board. I have the third nut on the top board, and I can easily represent Jack's full on the bottom board. And it's important when you're playing against somebody over time, too, that you show them that you'll apply pressure. So even if I do a full pot size bet and he wakes up with 699, that would really suck. But it does show, hey, you know what? Even if I have thin value on one board, I'm still going to apply the pressure because even though it might not pay off this time, it might pay off the next time he decides to call light. So there's a lot of different reasons why you want to bet pot. So I do a full pot size bet. We're going to see me count the chips out for a little bit. He does go in the tank for a little bit. So when he goes in the tank, I know for a fact he doesn't have 699. And he ends up calling. When he does call, he turns over pocket 10s. So he did not have the nut full house on the second board. And all he had on the top board was just a pair of 10s, which was winning at the time when he did it. But that just goes to show you how crazy double board bomb pots can be. So moving on to the next hand, we have another double board bomb pot. We look at 8-9 deuce 3. We have 3 spades in our hand. And the top board has 8-3-5 complete rainbow. So we have top and bottom pair on the top board. And the bottom board has 4-7 of spades with a 10 of clubs. So we have an open-ended straight draw, a flush draw. There is $100 in the pot. I elected to bet 50. I quickly get a bunch of callers. We're onwards towards the turn. So the turn brings up an 8 on the top board, giving us 8s full of 3s, essentially second nut. And the bottom board brings in the queen of spades. Now, what happens in this hand is everybody checks to me, and we are in position. So when you're in position and you're pretty nutted like this, there's 2 ways you can go about it. You can either be very dynamic and bet full-size pot, because you're trying to tell people, hey, I have an 8X, like I have an 8-3 or an 8-5 in this situation, or you can do a full pot size bet and be like, I have the ace of spades in this situation. So you're trying to scare your opponents off, or you can do the less popular strategy and just go for thin value. And that's what I do here. I go for thin value. I like to bet $100 into a $300 pot. And the reason why is since everybody checked to me, I don't think anybody else has a full house. And if they do have a full house, like 3's full, even though we're blocking that with a 3 in our hand, we want them to stay in. Or if they have 5's full. So if they have pocket 5s, I want them to stay in because I'm going to milk them as much as I can. On the bottom board, we have 3 spades in our hand, and there's a spade on the top. So when you look at that, you're like, there's a total of 7 spades out there. So I end up getting 2 callers. So we have $600 in this double board bomb pot onward to the river. Now, when the river comes out, the river doesn't change anything. It does put another spade on the bottom board, and it does put a 10 on the top board. So if somebody does have 8-10, that would be really unfortunate. But keep in mind, there's a 10 on the bottom board as well. So when they both check to me, now I'm going to go for value that I think might call. Looks a little polarizing. So I elect to bet a nickel, $500. It's $500 into a $600 pot. I could be super nutted. This is still a tough call if you only have one board at all. And so, yeah, I'm only up against 2 opponents. Now, again, if you haven't seen my double board bomb pot videos, when you're in position on double board bomb pots and you're 3 ways on the river, you almost always have to bet pot. You are almost required. It's like having a dry ace in 4-card pot limit Omaha or 5-card pot limit Omaha. But I bet $500. One person goes away. One person does call. I show him the bad news. I tell him I have 8s full on the top board and I have a 9 high spade on the bottom board. And he does confirm, yes, in fact, we are good. Moving right along to the last hand of this vlog, we are in another double board bomb pot. Now, I don't look at my cards until the action gets down to me. That's just a habit I have. So when I look down at deuce, deuce, 8, king, I feel pretty good about my hand. Or not. I do have pocket deuces. I do have a king high heart draw. Now, you can see on the top board, the board is deuce, 10, queen with 2 hearts. So I have the second nut heart draw, and I have bottom set. And on the bottom board, there's jack, 4, 9. So first player bets 30, gets all the way around to me. I'm on the button. I like to call. When the turns come out, the turns pair both boards. The top board puts out a queen of diamonds. The bottom board puts out the 4 of diamonds. Now there are 2 possible full houses out there on the board. So when the first player decides to bet pot, $200, you always have to ask yourself in double board bomb pots, what did the turn change that all of a sudden my opponent is really excited about? So when we look at the 2 turns, we have a queen on the top and a 4 on the bottom. So they could easily have bet $30 into this pot with 2 pair, like queen 10, jack 4, 4, 9, set of 10s, a set of jacks, a set of 9s. So literally when I'm sitting here with pocket deuces, the absolute worst full house you could possibly have, I'm just stressing. But $200 when it goes call, call, and it's back to me, now I'm thinking, you know, I think I just need to see what happens on the river. Keep in mind, I have the button in front of me. Having the button is so valuable in double board bomb pots because now I can make the decision at the end. Had I been the first person to call, I would have mucked this hand. But instead, I make the call, and we're going out to a river. Now, the river does bring in the front door flush up top with the 7 of hearts, and it does bring an ace of clubs, a front door flush, on the bottom as well. So now we have 4-way action going into the river, into a double board bomb pot. First player bets $600. Oh my God. You can see the person across the table from me is uncomfortable with that bet. I'm uncomfortable with that bet, and I'm last to act. I honestly have no idea what I'm doing at this moment in time. I don't know if I'm calling. I don't know if I'm folding. I will tell you, if I was this first person to call, I would lay it down. If I'm the last person to call, I'm more likely to call. And that's what I call the pickle position. I've talked about that in previous videos on my double board bomb pot videos. Again, if you haven't watched those, go back. It goes into great detail. But here you can see that everybody's in a pickle. From studying poker perspective, I love this bet. But from being in it at the time, I absolutely hate it. Matter of fact, we're going to see the live read of what I have here after this gentleman calls and the next person folds. Here we go. Oh, shut the front fucking door. What are you flatting with? Now, it's not often I end up talking to myself in a 3-way pot, but I am sitting there saying, what is the guy across the table flatting with? And the guy to my right ends up saying, it's a big bet. So just as a public service announcement, so everybody knows, if you're not involved in a hand, don't make any comments on the bet, things like that. That happens from time to time, but just a public service announcement. In any case, so I'm going in the tank and I'm trying to decide what can the first person have that he's so excited about that he is value betting the river. He's literally betting 60% of the pot. This is a please call me bet. This is a crying call bet. At the end of the day, the person to my left, I decide, has the bottom board, and I think the person across the table from me is a very strong player. I think he called maybe having a dangling queen, Maybe he called with having a flush up top. I think he called feeling that the pressure from the two players behind would cause his call to cause those players to fold. I throw in a chip and say, I hate my life, I hate money. I go ahead and call. First player announces he has the stone cold nuts on the bottom board. And I said, then I think I'm good. I think I had the right read. I have baby full house on the top. And surprisingly, we are good. Very tough decision, but managed to end up with the right call. Overall, the session was really up and down, very swingy. I ended up losing like $500 for the session, but I think at one point I was in for $5,000. So some of these games do get a little crazy, but it's good to know that you can get them back. But tough calls like this help.
Thank you guys for watching again, and if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button right over here. We definitely appreciate it. And also check out some of the things that we're selling on our Etsy store. Link is down below. And then don't forget, we are doing Dancing with Our Stars, which is a charity fundraiser. And I'm going to put the QR code right here. So please, if you can do all three of those, I greatly appreciate it. It helps the channel. Thank you, everybody. Play smart and run like a god.